What's up, bookworms? If you've stumbled upon this video, you might be like me and you might like to read. I've run Geek Media Core podcast for about 2.5 years now with my friend Danny, and one thing we really never have enough time for on the podcast is what we are reading, because it's kind of hard to really talk about in a geek pop culture kind of website or podcast. So I decided it was going to be a good opportunity for me to branch out the YouTube channel here and try to talk about the things that I like to do on my spare time, and pretty much with all my spare time, and that is read. I know that reading seems to be a niche thing at this point. It seems like there are people who are really passionate about it, but it gets treated a lot even by people I know that are like, why are you reading? Like, what am I reading? Why am I reading? Or what am I reading? Why are you reading? I'm sorry, I don't understand that question. To me, books are the perfect medium because any actor that you want can play any role. There's no limitations on budget or production company or graphic content, mature content, nothing like that. So obviously, the old statement, a movie in your mind, that applies here. I've been a big time book reader since, I guess maybe like fifth grade when I read The Hobbit. Jrr Tolkien, obviously a big fan. Pretty much branched me out into everything. It was my first book, I think, that it had no pictures in it. And I think from there on, it grew. To Kill a Mockingbird was probably like the next really big classic that I read. And little things like that just kept growing and growing until I got into high school. And that's when I started taking the advanced placement in literature. And while my friends were, watching the movie in class, well, I was reading the book in the class. We have like Far from the Madding Crowd, Catcher in the Rye, All Quiet on the Western Front, stuff like that. The classics that you wouldn't expect to be reading at the high school level. But what really branched out for me was when I was a freshman in high school, the It miniseries by Stephen King. That miniseries came on, I guess it was ABC. Actually, I don't think it was freshman year. It was just freshman year until I didn't really branch out. It was like 1990, I think. I think I was in like 7th grade. And anyway, that miniseries came on, and I got really interested in Stephen King. I got it that summer. Had to keep it a secret from my folks because Pentecostal, they were like, no, you're not reading anything by that satanic devil worshiper, whatever. No offense to Pentecostal people if you're into that, or religion at all. That's a conversation for a different podcast probably. But I read it that entire summer, and it really was a gateway for me for Stephen King. I read anything I could get my hands on. My freshman year in high school that I alluded to earlier was when I went to the library and found out, hey, they have Stephen King novels in here, and I just devoured anything that I could find. I had just moved here here is Houston. I just moved to Houston from Atlanta, didn't know anybody, so it's easy to see why I had troubles making friends that freshman year, because not only was my nose always buried in a book, but I was that creepy Stephen King kid. So obviously Stephen King, if you see behind me, Stephen King is my favorite author. I've read everything that I could possibly get my hands on. I have every single one of his stories on hardcover. He's got a new book coming out in September. I can't wait. But I'm also a really big fantasy and sci-fi fan, not just horror. Cut my teeth on The Hobbit, like I said. I love The Lord of the Rings. I read Dune about once a year. It's my favorite book of all time. Frank Herbert's Dune. Amazing. It'll change your life. Pretty much any fantasy series you can think of. I really got into Brandon Sanderson after he was introduced to me by some friends. Big time Song of Ice and Fire reader long before anybody had ever even heard of the television series. I know that a lot of people that are just show watchers like to bag on people that say that and say that we're elitist and we want something special. I don't know about all that. I just know that we wish that we had gotten the ending from George and not the TV show, but here we are. Harry Potter, of course. Who didn't get Harry Potter? Anne Rice back when she was good. I'm still collecting her books, even though I don't know why. I haven't read one since about like book 7 in the Vampire Chronicles. One series that I always kind of avoided was The Wheel of Time, just because it seemed so daunting. And I'll get into that. That's going to be my first video that isn't an introduction. Is going to be about my journey through The Wheel of Time that I'm going to be getting into very, very, very soon. But really, I just wanted to touch ground and say what this show is going to be. It's just it could be new books. It could be it's probably going to be mostly old books because I've got a huge backlog of books that I'm getting into. I like to collect, but I still read mostly digital just because most of the books I read are about 6 or 7 pounds, and I like to read in bed, and I don't like it when the book cracks me in the face. My iPad weighs less than a pound. If it falls on my face while I fall asleep, hey, that's not as big of a problem. So basically, I'm just gonna read a book. I'm gonna do a quick review and talk about it, and open it up for any kind of discussion. On the Geek Media Core podcast, we really try to avoid politics because it's just been so toxic lately that it's hard to have an actual discussion. If I talk about a book that touches on, like if I read Atlas Shrugged or something like that, it's going to be hard for me not to talk about politics. So obviously that's going to come up a little bit, but not in a abrasive way. It would just be addressing some things that I think really spoke to me, or got under my skin. That can happen. But most of the books I read, like I said, horror, science fiction, fantasy. That's probably going to be mostly what I talk about. I dip my occasional toe into the crime series. I've been real interested in Bosch because the Amazon series is really popular, and Stephen King can't stop talking about how great it is. And it pretty much encouraged him to write the Mr. Mercedes series, in my opinion. So I'll get into that a little bit if you guys want to start throwing recommendations at me and stuff like that. I've got a huge backlog I'm going to go through. Like I said, I'm going to start the Wheel of Time series here pretty soon, and that's quite daunting. That's going to be quite a project, and that's probably something that's going to be taking place over the course of the next year or so. So anything you guys want to talk about, don't be scared, because hey, you know what? Reading is cool. The more I've gotten older, the more time I've gotten to where my kids are at that age where they can't quite be left alone, but they're old enough to leave you alone for a little while. So my reading level has increased as I've gotten older, and as the kids have gotten older. So I think I can read about a good 500 to 700 page book in about a week if there's no crazy distractions going on. And so the content on this will probably be pretty rapid as compared to most reading channels. I'm not going to set any like time limits or anything like that, but I will keep you informed on what I plan on reading next. But just know for probably the next year plus, it's going to be probably Wheel of Time, I would imagine, unless I just DNF and do not finish the series, which I doubt. When I start a series, I usually try to finish it. Unlike George Martin. But that's a topic for when I do my Game of Thrones retrospective, or my Song of Ice and Fire retrospective, which will be coming after all the hoopla from the series. The final season coming up dies down, and it doesn't seem quite so clickbaity. So stick with me, and I will stick with you.